Hey folks, in today's video I'm going to give you all the details on the downlighting that I've got on my RV over here and over here. Now it's just about dusk right now, a little bit after 8 on a summer night, and so by the end of the video it'll be dark and I can show you what they actually look like at nighttime. But over a year ago I published a video demonstrating 36 different upgrades and mods that I performed on my RV back here. You know, some of them were big mods, some of them were small, some of them were complex, some of them were simple. And this mod in particular, I think I got perhaps the most questions on compared to all the other mods featured in the entire video. And so I figured, well, might as well give some more details on it because I really didn't show how to perform this mod. And so I'm going to show you which LED lights I used, how it works, how I did the wiring, all that good stuff. And then at the end of the video, I'll show you what it actually looks like and what you can do with the lights when it's nice and dark outside. Now, if you're watching this, I would imagine that you probably already have reasons of your own as to why you would want to do this mod and have the downlighting on both sides of your RV. I know for me personally, I certainly like the way that it looks. I think it creates a nice ambience at the campsite. But for me personally, I really just wanted some extra lighting at the campsite that I could control and really dial in. You know, most RVs nowadays have this bright LED strip at the top of the awning, and that certainly is handy. You can really, brighten up your campsite. But most of us aren't going to be keeping that light on all night long. Typically, it's considered poor campsite etiquette, especially if you got a, neighbor nearby. It might keep them up all night. And so I really just wanted some lighting that would lighten up my campsite at nighttime, that I could really control, that I could dim, that I could change the color. And so that's why I chose to do this mod. And this is actually kind of what I would consider my second iteration of this mod. I did a very similar mod on my previous RV before this. It was a Jayco Pinnacle fifth wheel. And that was kind of the first time I attempted anything like it, but I really liked it a lot on that RV. And so this go round, I kind of took it up a notch and added the color changing feature. And also with the install, which I'll show you in just a minute, I did something that I think looks a little bit cleaner, a little bit more professional, even though you're not really seeing it underneath there. And so I'll show you all those details here in just a minute. But to kick off the details for this mod, I'm going to talk about the wiring, because I think that's where I get most of the questions. You know, how did you wire it up? Especially if you're not as comfortable doing DIY projects on your RV. This one is pretty straightforward, and really the wiring or the source of the power, I think, is the most tricky thing, because depending on what kind of RV you have, it's going to be a little bit different. But basically on my RV here, this is a Grand Design Imagine 21BHE. And on most of the Imagine lineup, Grand Design from the factory actually wired in what they call, I believe, a docking light. And it's right by the sewer connection over there. And then they put a switch right inside this storage compartment right here. And so basically I chose to take power from that docking light that was already back there by the sewer connection, and instead use that power for the lights. So I can actually control the lights with this switch right here. I can turn them on and off. Of course, I can also use the remote that I'll show you a little bit later in the video. And so that was how it worked for me. You know, I think if on your RV you already have an exterior light source, especially one that's on this side of your RV, I think it's probably easiest just to tap into that light source. And in my case, I actually disabled the docking light because I really didn't need it with how bright these lights are here. So that's one option, certainly, to take power from an existing source. But let's say that you don't have an existing 12-volt source to connect into. I'm going to show you real quickly what you can do inside my RV here. Of course, this is my converter panel, my AC/DC converter panel. And you'll notice with the DC fuses up here, I've got a whole bunch of open slots where there's no fuses. You know, this is a pretty small RV here, so of course if you have a bigger RV, you may not have any open slots. But if I pull this converter panel out, I'm gonna find a corresponding lead, a wire, for each of these empty fuses. That's basically hot 12-volt power, you know, the moment that I put a fuse in there. So if I didn't have an existing 12-volt power source, I would just take one of these empty spots right here, pull the lead from the back of the panel, and use that as my hot 12-volt lead. Of course, there's going to be a common ground as well that you can tie into. But that way you can choose, you know, what size fuse to put in there, and then it's a dedicated circuit essentially. Okay, so once you figure out the 12-volt source, then it just becomes a matter of how you're going to route everything. And in my case, since my 12-volt source was already back here by the sewer connection, I decided to start my lights, the strips, from the back of my RV just because it'd be, you know, shorter. And so basically I got 2 LED strips from Hit Lights, and I'll put a link to all this down below so that you can purchase it. But it's an Amazon brand, Hit Lights, and basically it's 2 separate LED strips. They come in lengths of 32 feet. You can actually cut them down. You know, my RV is only about 21 feet from the front to the back there. And so I was able to cut them down, but that way you can get it to a custom length, and you can, you know, run the full length of your RV. And so I got 2 of those strips, and basically on the end of those strips, you know, they intend for you to plug it into a transformer, right? An AC adapter that's gonna, you know, step the voltage down to 12 volt DC. But since the lights are natively 12 volt and your RV is already 12 volt, well, you don't need that AC adapter. And so I just wired in directly the Hit Lights, the LED strips, to that 12 volt power source. And there's gonna be a little, I guess you could call it a receiver on the end of the LED light strip, and that receiver is what receives the signal from the remote when you want to change the color of the lights or the brightness. So you just want to be extra careful not to cut off that receiver, otherwise the lights won't work. I mean, basically the receiver is like the brains for the lights and where it receives the signal from the remote. But let me give you some close-up views underneath here. We're at the rear of the RV on the driver's side, and you can see right here is where the LED strip ends, right at the very back of the RV. In fact, let me turn on a light here. There we go. That way you can see a little bit better. But basically, the wire comes out of the LED strip. We leave all that intact, and then you can see I've got it surrounded by some wire loom right here just to protect it. And actually, that transmitter, or receiver rather, is right here in the wire loom. And so that was another reason I did the wire loom, just to protect all that and, you know, keep it protected from the elements. And so I've got a little tie wrap there to make sure this doesn't fall off, but then basically it runs straight into the underbelly all the way across to the other side. And then I just used one of those Wago lever nuts, a 3-gang model. You know, here's a 5-gang model. I really like these a lot for RV wiring. But basically I've got a splice in the middle, and it runs to the other side to send a separate 12-volt power, just like it looks here, to the other side of lights. And then of course it's being fed from the 12-volt power that I borrowed from, actually I think it's right there, the little original docking light. And so that's how everything's wired. You know, everything's protected inside the underbelly. The only part that is exposed is right here. And again, that receiver is also protected. Okay, so those are the basic electrical details. By the way, guys, if I left anything out, definitely drop me a question below and I'll do my best to answer them. But let me show you next how I physically mounted and attached them to the RV. So what you're looking at right here, we're still on the back of the RV driver's side, and this is an outrigger that's attached to the frame of my RV. This is a Lippert frame, by the way. And I've noticed that on most outriggers, they have this gap at the very top, about maybe 1.5 inches wide, maybe about 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch tall. And this gap is on all the outriggers. And so it worked out really nice for me. I was able to slide the LED strip through that gap in the outrigger all the way down. So all the outriggers, all the way from the back to the front, there were no obstacles. All of them already had that slot cut into them, and so I didn't have to do any modifying on the RV itself. And this way, you know, they're nice and protected. But like I was saying earlier, this is kind of my Rev 2 of the downlighting. On my last RV when I did this, I actually just attached the LED strip to the bottom of my I-beam right here. You know, Grand Design puts the underbelly material on the outside of their frame, whereas my last RV was a Jayco. They put this material up on the inside of the frame. And so there was a metal frame running front to back, and I just stuck the LED strip right to there, no protection, nothing, and it held up just fine. But this go around, I decided to do a little bit more and actually put the LED strip inside of a U-shaped aluminum channel. And so you can kind of see up there what that channel looks like. It's just the perfect size for an LED strip to go inside of, and then it has a nice clear cap to cover everything that kind of snaps on there. And that way, the LED lights are protected, because this particular one that I bought, it's not technically waterproof. And so I wanted to make sure, it was protected. So basically what I did is I ran the aluminum channel first. If I remember right, it came in 3-foot lengths approximately, and I think a pack of 6. So I had to get 2 packs, 1 for each side. But basically ran that aluminum channel all the way down where I wanted the strip to be. And I used silicone plus the screws that were supplied to, secure the aluminum channel. Then I came back and actually stuck the LED strip inside that channel, and it's got adhesive on the back of it that you pull right off, just a peel and stick. And then I came back with a clear cover that was included with that aluminum channel, and that kind of finished everything off real nicely. And then I just had a tube of silicone on hand so that at each end or at each joint where the clear plastic covers came together, I'd put a nice dab of silicone to seal everything up. And that way this is completely sealed up, and I don't have to worry about when I'm driving in the rain and the tires right there are kicking up water onto the lights. I don't have to worry about anything getting wet. And by the way, guys, I have driven through some torrential rainstorms for hours where the water was just spraying up on these lights, and they've held up just fine. So just take your time, seal up everything with silicone. And you just basically run the lights from the rear here all the way to the front. And then when you get to the front, like I said, you can trim these lights. They're custom length. Just look for a mark on the lights where it has a scissor icon, and that's where it's safe to cut them. And that way you've got a seamless set of LED lights running from the back all the way to the front. And it's almost dark now. I think the camera probably makes it look a little bit lighter than it really is. But it just turned out really nice, having that seamless strip all the way from the back to the front. It just kind of rolls right over the tires. And let me see if I can get you some more details up here so you can see how I routed everything. Again, I just went right through each of those outriggers. I didn't have any obstacles or anything that I had to relocate. So, I mean, that could change RV to RV, but it just looks really clean, and it just follows a real nice straight line all the way from the back all the way up there to the front. And it's the same story on the passenger side. On the campsite over here, didn't have any obstacles, and I just followed the frame there going right through the outriggers. You can see my steps here. Same story there, didn't have any obstacles. I've got steps that deploy from the outside here. I think most people probably have the step above or solid steps that fold into your RV. But even here, the outrigger still has that same slot. And so I was able to follow that right through the steps all the way to the back. Again, no obstacles the whole way. All right, so now that it's dark, I'll walk around so you can get the full effect of what these actually look like. And then I'll show you the controls. I've got them set to just a basic blue color right now. They are in the full brightness setting, but you can see it just casts a real nice blue light down below. And of course you can change it to other colors as well. It's not so bright that it's gonna bother your neighbors, but I mean, it lights up all the right spots around your RV to give you some extra visibility, especially if you're going up and down your steps at night. So I really like this mod a lot. But let me show you the controls with the remote, because like I said before, these are 2 independent strips that are running, one for each side. And so one hurdle that I had to overcome was, well, how can I control both of those strips simultaneously without having, something clunky where I've got 2 different remotes to control? And thankfully, the manufacturer of these lights provisioned a way to synchronize and basically pair one remote to both sides. And so that's exactly what I've done. I'll put the instructions up because the instructions that came with the lights did not work. And I emailed the manufacturer and very quickly got a response back with the correct instructions how to pair them. But basically I've got one remote right here. It comes with one for each side, but this one I put a label on the back, Master. And so this one is paired to both sides. And so you can see I've got 12 different colors right there. So if I push red, it's going to change both sides to red. And I can just go through all the colors real quickly so you can see what they all look like. But because this remote is paired to both sides are going to respond to it simultaneously and change regardless of what I'm doing, the color or the brightness. And it also does have a white there at the bottom there. It's kind of a cool white. So then you can also change the brightness of the lights. So let's say that you don't want to, blind your neighbors at night It's got this one here, and you can dim them all the way down where, I mean, there's just barely a, just a faint amount of light on both sides. And so a lot of times if I'm leaving them on all night long, I'll just put it on this lowest setting, and it probably looks a little bit brighter in the video than it does in person. Again, that's the dimmest setting, and I can take it up all the way to the brightest setting. And really, guys, it's a lot of fun being able to change the colors and everything. Sometimes my kids have fun taking turns choosing, well, what color, lights is it going to be tonight? But really, most of the time, I'm more of a practical guy, right? Most of the time, I'm keeping it either on a nice blue, like this one here, or the amber, this one right here. It's my understanding that bugs are least attracted to amber, and so a lot of times, especially if the mosquitoes are out, I'll just keep it on this one, and that way the bugs aren't drawn to it. This, of course, is the brightest setting right here, and you can see it just lights everything up just like you'd want it to. And then, of course, I can dim it down and go dimmer. This is the dimmest setting on the amber there, on the orange. So yeah, it's really neat. I mean, there's just a lot of different things you can do. And then because it comes with 2 remotes, like I said, I paired my lights so they both respond to this remote. But I also still have the other remote, and this one I labeled campsite. And so I figured if I want to control one side independently, it's probably going to be the campsite. So this one here only controls one side. So if I want to make this side over here blue on the campsite, there you go. So yeah, it's pretty neat. That way you really have control over the lights. And of course I can still use the switch that's in my wet bay there in the storage compartment. And it's kind of like a master switch basically, and it turns them off. One thing that's really neat I discovered about these lights is they do have a memory. And so if I use that master switch there that cuts 12-volt power, when I turn it back on, it's going to return to the last settings, including the color, the brightness. But before I close the video out, let's have a little bit of fun. And let me show you some neat things that you can do with these lights. I'm going to stand back here in the light so you can see what I'm doing with the remote. I've got the master right here, and so of course I can turn them on and off. I usually keep this inside, and they're going to go back on to where they last were. So again, it's got a memory. But let's say that maybe it's the 4th of July, and so you want to have a little bit of festive lighting at your campsite. So I've got my tongue jack right here. It's got a nice kind of a cool white light on the front. But then let's say that I want to go here on the lights, and first I'm going to hit red, and then I'm going to pull out my other remote right here that's not paired to both, only on the campsite, and let's make this one blue. There we go. And then you've got some 4th of July lighting. So that's kind of fun. Now let me show you one last thing here. If you really want, whoa, what is going on here? Did somebody call for a party? Oh yeah, check this out, guys. If you really want to have some fun, hit the M+ button or the auto button on the remote, and it just starts doing random colors, fading, flashing on both sides there. And I mean, you can really have just a fun time at your campsite. I don't think I've ever actually used this practically at a campsite. I'm not going to be that campsite neighbor, but it is kind of fun, all the different things that you can do here with these lights. Well guys, I'm going to close out the video here on the amber setting. This is probably what I use most frequently, especially in the summer months when the mosquitoes are out. But I hope you found this video helpful. I will include links down below to purchase all the different components I mentioned, everything from the LED strips to the aluminum channel to the Wago lever nuts, even if you need some basic 12-volt wiring to extend your wires. I'll include links to all that down below, so I appreciate you using that to help support the channel. Again, guys, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop me a comment below, and I'll be glad to answer them. As always, thanks for watching.